So let's look at some of these things. So I got interested in binding because of 11 O'Clock Comics, which was a podcast I listened to and a message board that I was a member of. So I met a bunch of people that are on the Discord server. So my first thing was there was a thread on there about binding, and I was interested. It looked like a slippery slope into madness, but one that I was interested in checking out. So I think the first thing that I put together to be bound was Werewolf by Night, because I had become kind of interested in that character, which I was into when I was a kid, and filled in all the holes in my collection cheaply at like Sidewalk 50% off sales at Excalibur Comics here in Portland and stuff like that. So I'd filled in all the holes and picked up a bunch of his ancillary appearances as well for like next to nothing. So I sent off my run to be bound, and this is what I think Jack from Staple Spine called the Portland Darkhold. So you can see the quality of the work here. It is quite literally just lopping off the spines and gluing them all into something. So I forgot the name of this company. They were bought out by Hushin around 2010, I think, 2011. So yeah, I mean, they put in a couple blank pages just like you would in any kind of library thing. I mean, this is just a general service that is around for binding, monthly publications, quarterly, whatever, journals. Libraries use these things all the time for just to collect things in a harder, more durable format that are publications that are important of some type of like science or whatever kind of journals. So they just took my comics that I put them in, stacked them up, wrapped a rubber band around them, put in an order sheet that said, this is the color I want, put this on the spine, and I think that was the first one. Actually, you know what? It might not have been. I might have been testing the waters with good old Blue Beetle. I love this book when it came out. Not a huge DC guy, but whenever there was kind of a number one in the late 80s, like The Flash, Superman, that Byrne run, whatever, I would pick them up, and this is the one that I really love. This one and Hex. So actually, I'm fairly certain that this and Hex were my first finds. I can actually tell because I went with the standard, this thing. This is like the default. So if you don't tell them something specifically, this is how they're going to make your spine. And I didn't realize until later that you could do different stuff like this. So I think Blue Beetle and my Hex were what I sent off first. If you don't know, Jonah Hex is the cowboy character who, after the end of Crisis, got sent into the Mad Max future, which was cool at the time. And I absolutely loved it. I love Mark Texeira's art in this. Ron Wagner did this one, but Texeira did most of the first probably 12 issues. And I was a complete sucker for it. I love the character. I love his love interest of Stiletta here. I love this book. I think it's a blast. Fleischer wrote it. Fleischer wrote a lot of his original stuff. This is the first issue I bought off a spinner rack. Look at this. Looks like somebody done got himself a subscription. But yeah. And I think the only reason I checked this out was because of this issue. So this had Batman, who was, all the shit, fighting Jonah Hex. Turns out it's a dude in the future. It's not Bruce Wayne. It is not anybody we know. It's kind of a short-lived dude, but he was a vigilante in this dystopian future. And I was hooked after this and immediately subscribed. So as far as how these bindings work, gutter loss and stuff like that, I mean, this says Cult of Death. You do lose a little bit here, but this is the old binding. The newer stuff's better. But it doesn't bug me too much because, I mean, I don't know. You lose a little, but not a lot. So yeah, I think those are the first two. I got those back. Okay, this is all coming back to me now. I'm actually being accurate here. Those are the first two I sent off and loved them. And because I love Blue Beetle, there was an appearance by The Question in like issue 5 and 6, which is like a gang war storyline. And I got into The Question. And so I sent off these to be bound with that lovely series. Yeah, if you haven't read this, I can't recommend it enough. Denny O'Neil, who the artist is? Magyar and Dennis Cowan. Dennis Cowan does the pencils, and Rick Magyar does the inks, and it's an amazing book. Gritty, kind of dark, very no powers. But the only time anybody really shows up is like Green Arrow. Very grounded. Adults, suggested for mature readers. So I had those sent off and came back. And I think at this point it had its hooks in me. And I was, just like tattoos or anything else, I was into it. So yeah, I wanted to love the new universe. I really love Starbrand. I read Night Mask and Justice for the most part, but Starbrand was what really got me. Which is basically Marvel New Universe's Green Lantern. Early Romita Jr., where he's clearly who he is. I mean, he's defined. That's very JR. Yeah, I fucking love this book. And it gets really weird as it goes on after... I forgot who was writing this. Shooter wrote the early scripts because this character is Ken Connell, and apparently this is what Shooter looks like. So it was an open kind of joke that he made himself a superhero in the book that he was writing. Jim Shooter and Roy Thomas. At some point, though, things kind of go off the rails. They tie all the books together into one big event, and John Byrne came in and finished this book off in an absolutely bizarre way that has to be read to be believed. It gets very 2001. And then I got into this book, which was an indie thing from, I think, Kitchen Sink or... Yeah, and so this was like volume 3, I think. This had been around, volume 2. There was a series published in the 70s, but it's just an anthology sci-fi horror thing. So here's some Burns. And this is where Cenozoic Tales started. Mark Schultz, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, it's called, the cartoon was called. There's some amazing stuff. I mean, it's an anthology, so of course it's hit and miss, but just a bunch of indie people doing some cool throwback stuff. It's kind of like a weird underground version of Weird Science or something like that. I love it. So I had that bound. As you can see, though, at this point, somebody hit me to the fact that you don't have to have that sideways thing with the two little bars. You can tell them to put this size and just make it as big as they can. So once I was aware of that, I was off to the races. Yeah, and then I just kept doing it with this company. I'm not going to show you all these, but I have all of Brand New Day up to the Gauntlet, or through the Gauntlet, bound. I love those. I love that run. The Shadow, I absolutely love the character. I really loved this crazy one that Chaykin did the miniseries of, and then Helfer took over. It has Sienkiewicz and Baker. Very unorthodox. He had Uzis. It was set in modern times. Crazy stuff. Really love it, though. Highly recommend it. And one thing that's cool about this company was people would have custom dies stamps made for... Like, people get way into this. You can have custom covers. If you want to get into graphic design and download their little template, you can upload high def art and have actual photo art on here. I toy with the idea. I'm not a big graphic designer guy, and I don't know. Part of me just kind of likes the library genericness of them. So whatever. But somebody had paid to have a shadow stamp made. And so once somebody does that, they're just part of the library that anybody could use after they're created. So I was stoked to have the shadow stamped on the spine here. So I did take advantage of this one, had it done in this format, but with this cool guy here. And since I had the fever, I picked up these cheap Shadow Strikes. My understanding is that this was created as an outcry. People were pissed off that the shadow in the other volume I was showing you was in modern times and using Uzis. And so they set him back in the classic era and had him do classic shadowy things. This was written by Gerard Jones, who I'm told became a complete sleazebag, or was a sleazebag, but nobody knew at the time. I forgot what he did, something gross. But the art by Barreto is really nice throughout this thing. I find the story is actually pretty stiff, and I don't know. I've never actually read through both volumes of this. I mean, he meets, Doc Savage comes in here, and some of these other recurring characters, but I don't know. It's okay. It's good to scratch an itch that you get every once in a while, but I never loved this run. It felt like it was just a way to appease the people who were pissed off that something interesting happened with the Shadow in the other DC run. So that's that.